Today on Comm Talk, we're talking to comic book writer JS Earls.
Rogue signal intercepted. Signal designation B's, views and reviews. Signal host Branson Boykin. Initiating Comm Talk.
Hey guys, welcome to B's, Views and Reviews, the podcast that promotes faith-based, family-friendly comics and the creators that make them. Brought to you by Geek Devotions, a show by devoted geeks devoted to letting you know that you are loved. I'm B, and today we're going to be talking with JS Earls, comic book writer, voice actor, podcaster, and D&D enthusiast. JS, is there anything you don't do?
Yeah, no, that's a good. Well, voice acting is a kind of a funny thing. I've fallen into that. That's not really something I've tried to go with, but
cool. Well, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you. So, real quick for the people who have been living under a rock and maybe don't know who you are yet, give us a little bit about your background, like, what got you into comics and what got you into writing comics specifically.
Yeah, I actually, boy, I'm old, so there's a lot to say, but I actually started reading and writing some of my own comics in like second grade.
Oh wow.
That was basically, I kind of started falling in love with comics then, and animation, and really, and what little anime was around at that time. Like I was really getting into that too. But my mom, I really wasn't very interested in reading, so my mom had gotten comics to try to get me to read. So that was like my gateway to reading. So yeah, and then I swear, like to this day, I think I learned more science from comics than I did ever in school. Just because of so much, especially with the Marvel comics, because Stan Lee and they were so into that.
Oh yeah.
and putting all that science stuff in there and all these words, and like, so yeah, I always surprised people when I knew all these weird scientific words and everything, but I knew them because they were named after villains or characters or some device or whatever, so, but it's a great way to learn if you have something like that to help you memorize and understand what it is. But yeah, so I was kind of doing that, but at the same time too, I was really into sports. And so I was doing a lot of sports stuff at the same time. I will say one of the things that I've kind of carried with me from sports into doing comics and things is definitely kind of being a team player kind of mentality, and trying to give everybody equal opportunity, and also really knowing like where people's strengths are, and where their where their weaknesses are and stuff too, but to really be able to use those things and give them an opportunity to use those things. And anyways, I kind of fast forwarding, I was really, I started doing a lot more when it got to middle school, and then I was still doing a lot of sports stuff, but then we were creating our own comics, and then I was even getting other people to work with me. I had a really great in public school. I had a really great public school teacher who did a couple different things, but he was actually a comic fan, and and this is before I was a Christian, but he was a Christian, and he actually even in public school would aired some like anti-abortion films and stuff, which way back then wasn't as unusual as it would be nowadays, but because they would
you could probably get away with a little bit more back then.
Yeah, and it's more, it's more towards, if anything, it was kind of to help use as a deterrent for us, like, okay, like if you're, you kids need to not do this stuff, and so you won't have that responsibility, and this is what's going to happen if you do decide to kill your baby or whatever. And but he also did a lot of stuff on like the effects of nicotine and a lot of other stuff, because he was I think one of the things he did was like was as like a health teacher, like for that kind of stuff. So it wasn't like it wasn't appropriate, but it was great because every week he would have and I don't necessarily think it was previews. It might have been like a simpler version of previews or something, because it's around the time when Diamond was actually starting up. But
Oh, wow.
but he would actually he would print copies for all the kids who were interested in comics. He would print copies and kind of give them to us so we could see what was going to be coming out and different things. And and so we'd kind of do all that stuff. And the cool thing was, I guess for me, and this was just always, it's always a weird thing because like I said, I always like sports. So the kind of cool thing was I was actually even able to get a lot of the cool kids and the some of the athletes and different things like into reading comics and into stuff like that. At a
Cool.
time where that was definitely not very popular, but we would have,
Right.
but I was, since I, was with them on the sports teams and stuff, like I had relationships with them, and it was like really cool to be able to share that stuff. And it was really interesting because I like in my I'm trying to think what grade it was. I guess 8th grade was really when I started cranking out a lot of stuff. I know like one series alone we did like it was like 12 issues, and
Oh,
then
wow.
I had these other ones, and granted they were about half as long as a regular comic, and definitely the writing wasn't quite as good and blah blah blah. But yeah, I was like cranking out a bunch of stuff, and it was really cool. And the really interesting thing was too, we actually our one that really took off, and this was a kind of it was kind of religious. It was
Mhm.
it was it was a comic called Cyrus, and it was about this guy in the near future named Cyrus Starshine, which I did
Oh,
not
all
come up with
right.
that name. But that was actually, this is one of the few ones that I kind of helped create, but I kind of let my one buddy of mine who was wanting to be a writer, I let him do most of the writing on it, and I just
Mhm.
handled the art. And he and so anyways, but he had, it was a very odd, interesting idea because we had these things that we called the gauntlets of Moses that gave him power.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and that he had like on his wrists and stuff, and he had like a very, since it was in the future, very futuristic looking suit and everything.
Yeah.
And he also had like, where we were just like taking little bits of here and there from like everywhere, but he had like a he had like he had like it was kind of like the ghost or spirit of King Cyrus that would talk to him.
Oh, wow.
It was just this bizarre
Cool.
thing, but it was like, it was but it was kind of cool because then we had these like, I don't know, demonic kind of things and other things that he would fight against in the future
Mhm.
that were kind of like crossing over into our world and stuff. And it was just really interesting because like that one by far was like our most popular one. And like I said, that was the one that was like that we actually did like 12 issues, which is, I mean, when you think about how long a school year is, like
Right.
that would, like we were making more than monthly on because of, and that was mainly just driven by how popular it was. And it was like just
Wow.
crazy that we were kind of doing that. But
So did you like print them yourself and hand them out at school or?
yeah, and we had I think we had access to some printers that we could use a certain amount of. I think at like the library, and then also like it wasn't me, but I think one of the other guys like helped out sometimes in the office or something, and since he did that, they let him print some there
Oh,
too. But
wow.
yeah, but we printed, and even then we weren't printing a ton of them. It was only, I don't know, like 10 copies. But they'd be like 12 pages each or whatever. And then those
Yeah.
copies would be shared by everyone, and they would just be just passed around the school and everything. And it was, yeah, it was pretty wild though.
That is amazing.
And it was, and the weird thing is like during that time, like I was totally on like a superhero role. And so like a lot of this stuff is our superhero related kind of things. and characters and things that I had created, and we did these stories and everything. And they weren't that great, but I mean, some of the characters and stuff were pretty cool. And I was definitely drawing that much. I definitely was getting a lot better at drawing. And but then I should say this for anybody that has ever listened to our Supersonic Pod Comics podcast, some of those characters and designs are actually kind of transferred into that. Like the ones that were unique enough or had a, more unique power or something like that. I kind of took those and carried some of those over. And I know Ben Avery, who is the other main writer on that podcast, I know he's done that with a few of his things too. But then it was interesting because that was when I was actually living in Wisconsin. Then I moved on to Florida, and that was around the time when I became a Christian. And I was already curious, and I had some very wild kind of spiritual experiences before, some very powerful, like godly ones, and a couple that were like very demonic. So I was I definitely knew there was good and evil and stuff like that. And definitely had experienced some things that really rang true to me. I actually, and this is going to sound, I don't know, I guess I should share it though. Hey, it's a Christian podcast.
Absolutely.
When I was in kindergarten, my parents were talking about getting a divorce, and they did end up getting divorced. But and I didn't really know it. Well, my dad was not a Christian, although many years later I found out that he actually felt called to be a pastor, but he didn't.
Wow.
He didn't think that he could support a family on that, so he rejected it, and then basically didn't really let us have much like God influence or anything like that, like around the house or anything, and so like we never went to church or anything like that. I did have, I guess from what my mom said, I did have a one of the teachers who was like a Christian, and that was at thing. And anyways, she saw that I was really upset because I had kind of overheard my parents talking, and they were talking about getting divorced and all this different stuff. And so like she was asking why I was upset, and I told her what I had heard, and she's like, well, you just have to pray, you just have to talk to God, and if you ask him not to let your parents get divorced, then they won't get divorced. And I'm like, oh, cool. This is like magic. Like I can just ask for it and it'll happen. This is like Santa Claus. And yeah, so I guess she's probably part of the name it and claim it crowd. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, this is great. But so I ended up like that night, when I went home and I was getting sleepy, I like prayed to God, and I said, I was like saying, please don't let my parents get divorced and everything. And that was about it. And then I had like some kind of weird vision or something where I heard a voice speaking from the sky, and it felt like the universe was talking to me. I mean, it's like, it was like, I don't know. It was almost like all creation. I mean, it just, and it was like a very deep and powerful, but kind of peaceful voice. And it did not give me the answer I wanted, but
God tends to do that sometimes.
Yeah. And this is the thing. And as soon as I say this, anybody who knows anything about the Bible is going to go, oh, that's really interesting, because God said that many times in the Bible, but he said, don't be afraid, I will be with you.
Oh, wow.
And
you were in kindergarten when this happened?
I was in kindergarten when this happened.
Wow.
But I mean, when you have something like that happen, it's, it's gonna stay with you. So when I heard the gospel, and when I specifically also when I getting into the word and stuff, into the Bible, it's like, you know, when I start coming across that, and this, you know, and this is God saying this to so many different people, like in the Bible, I'm like, oh yeah, like that, yeah, that's God. That's not like, I'm not like
That's his MO. That's what he
him.
does.
Yeah, that's his MO. He's like, he doesn't say he's not gonna have you deal with it or the hardship or whatever. He's like, but I mean, and half the time, you know, when he pops up or an angel, it's like they tell him not to be afraid. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
don't be afraid. I'll be with you. And it's like, okay, that's, I mean, like, if I wasn't so blown away by the experience, I'm sure I would have been like, that's not really what I was asking for when
Right.
when I was praying. But then obviously, you know, I mean, looking back now, I'm like, man, that was an amazing thing, and just so many other things that happened in my life. And honestly, one of the ways that I got started to get really closer to God and really considering about becoming a Christian before I even barely really knew what it was. My mom had become a Christian, but obviously our parents were divorced,
Mhm.
and I was with my dad. And but she and my uncle, they knew I liked rock music, so they started sending me Petra and some different Christian rock albums.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And so I actually, and like literally, that's really what like sowed the seeds like in my life, to so that when the gospel was presented and stuff to me, and kind of explained, you know, more clearly and everything, that I was like ready to accept. And it's funny because all my friends that loved Christian music, but their parents hated it, would use me as as the poster boy of, because their parents would always say nobody ever gets saved from Christian music or Christian rock or whatever, and they're like, well, Jeff did. And yeah, but then when I so then but around that time I was really getting hooked on anime and stuff. And as far as like, that was like, I really liked that style, and I wanted to
Mhm.
find a way to mix like American style art and anime style art. So I was doing some of that, and definitely leaning a lot more towards anime. And it was getting to the point throughout high school, that and I even ended up getting interviewed in some newspapers locally down here in Florida, that because I won like salutatorian or something like that at my school,
Oh, wow.
which is amazing because that was not my focus. And
I understand.
I was definitely one of those people that like, let's wait until Sunday night to do our Monday homework that we have to turn in Monday morning. I was like,
Absolutely.
you know, so and listen to music or something while I'm doing my homework or studying.
Right.
It's like, yeah, so I'm clearly really invested here. But
It was the Petra music. You listened to Petra, and that's
yeah,
what got you through it. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, I already learned everything I needed from comic books, so I didn't really have to, you know, go to school for the rest of the time. But yeah, but I started just really getting into that stuff. I did end up, I had a bad turn because we had around that time was really when the 80s indie thing was like really taking off. And then kind of had really small opportunities and submitted some things. But then everything that that my buddy and I submitted, we submitted to 3 different companies, and all 3 of our things basically got stolen,
Oh, gosh.
and really turned us off from the comic book industry.
Yeah, I can
Um,
imagine.
and so yeah, so I really wasn't that serious about it again for many years, and actually ended up playing in a Christian rock band for about 10 years. But on the side, I was always drawing and always writing stuff,
Mhm.
and then like started to get some stuff. Started to get some opportunities to do some writing again. I actually was helping out. There's a guy who actually was with Marvel in the very beginning. Fran Matera is his name, and he actually was a he lived when Marvel was beginning. He lived on a houseboat in New York, and
Oh,
was
wow.
and he was, before they were at like the bigger building, they were actually in like, it was like a 4-story house or something, and like
Yeah.
each level they would pass the stuff, like the writers were on the top, and then they pass it down to the pencilers or whatever, and then they pass it down to like the inkers, and they pass it down to like the colors, and like that's the way that it was starting, like way back when. And he had all these like great stories, but I played, but his son was in Christian rock bands, and our bands played a lot of shows together. So I had started developing a relationship with him, and then I was always fascinated in finding out about, like, the comics and all this stuff. And he was doing one of the last adventure comic strips that were in like the newspapers and stuff. That wasn't like a funny one; it was more of like a action drama thing.
Yeah.
And then so flash forward another couple years, his writer passed away, and that was what kind of opened an opportunity when his another one of his friends, which he had kind of remembered me, but he remembered me more as an artist at that time. And then he said, but then one of the other friends that knew me and everything too, he said, "No, you should really talk to him. He's focusing more on writing now because." Because I'm an idea guy, and one thing that I learned is, like, if you're an artist, if you're a comic book artist, you can only do like one book a month. If you're a comic book writer, you can do like 4 to 6 possibly a
Yeah.
month, because it's much less time consuming than doing all the art in a visual
Right.
medium. So anyways, so that kind of opened the opportunity for that, and then that actually getting used to doing that, because that was a daily syndicated strip across the United States and parts of the world too. And
Wow.
I was ghostwriting that because it was because they weren't they were fine. Like, what they would do is they would let people ghostwrite, and King's Features, who ran the stuff back then, would let people ghostwrite. And then, they would let the artist or somebody choose it, and as long as there wasn't anything bad or there wasn't a terrible response to something, then they'd let them do that for a few months, and then they would let them become like a regular writer or whatever for them, even if it was unpaid or something. But they'd let them kind of work their way in like that, and kind of unfortunately and fortunately at the same time, that artist decided to. It's funny. Working together, like, just really rekindled a love in him for comics and art and stuff. Because I was so young and enthusiastic and so eager to learn and try really hard and everything, that he ended up retiring about a year and a half after we started working together. And he wanted in the series. Pretty much King's Features was getting rid of all their adventure strips and everything anyways. Like, there was like Flash Gordon and all these different things that just were not doing that well in the newspapers anymore. And but anyways, yeah. But then during that time, when I was it was really helping me hone my craft. I was also working as an orthodontic X-ray lab tech at that time, for like 12 to 16 hours a day. Because I made a lot of the appliances and things, so a lot of times I'd be working at night too, and so I would actually see him and turn stuff into him on my lunch hours, because he wasn't too far away from where I worked. And that's actually when I would write a lot of times too, was on my lunch hours, because I didn't there was just a lot of stuff going on at home and stuff with my wife, and a lot of being young marrieds, but we had, I don't know, like, I think I'm trying to think, she was working really far away, and then also when she had our second child, she was really going through severe postpartum depression and stuff like that. So the only time I really had to write was on my lunch hour. But the great thing about that is it really got me to be able to streamline everything and get in and really figure things out, like, even as I was working or whatever, just kind of to learn how to tell like good quality stories quickly, and be able to crank that out, which really served me really well later. But that was really those things. And then when the opportunity came, I started having another couple friends that were telling some publishers that they were working with, they both were like recommending me, and so then the publishers were like asking for these ideas and stuff. So that was what led to Pistolfist. And actually at that time, the crazy thing is, like, I had probably like 15 different things, but I had them kind of numbered by like how much I had actually developed them. The ones that I had a lot more time and brain power into, and a lot of other stuff. And even like I had artists that were interested in doing certain things and everything. And I were like way more towards the top. And Pistolfist was like down like around 12 or 13.
Wow.
All I had written down was superhero set in the American Revolution. And that was that was it. But I had 3 publishers immediately interested.
Really?
Yeah. And so they were like, and my buddy's like, okay, he's like, they want a miniseries proposal. And it was like on Friday, basically. There was like a couple responded in the morning, then another one responded like that afternoon. He's like, okay, they're all wanting like an official series proposal like Monday. And I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing this weekend. It's like, because
Yep.
I mean, and especially because I mean, like I said, that was all I really had. I mean, the one reason why that kind of came to me too is I would listen to a lot of books on tape or CD or whatever as I was working, especially when I was working alone late in the office or whatever. I would listen to a lot of stuff, and there were a few different. I listened to a few different. Some of them were factual. Most of them were, I don't know, a little bit more, not as fictional as what Pistolfist is, where it almost leans towards steampunk and some other stuff. But
Yeah.
but definitely more narrative, and I don't know, more written like a story than like a textbook. And I was
Right.
really fascinated by a lot of the events and a lot of the different characters, and just so much stuff that I had not really heard. And that I don't know. And that was one of the things that got me really fascinated with that stuff. And a little bit I had heard and learned about the Ben Franklin stuff, which was one of the main reasons why I wanted him in there. And that's what I told people too. I was like, they're like, oh, you just want Ben Franklin in there because he's a recognizable, person. Where it's like, wow, there's actually a lot of reasons why I want him in there. And a lot of it is like, yeah, some of it does have to do with his inventions and different things like that. But then also it's like his family and stuff, because like I'm still shocked that there have not been more people or like movies or different things that have covered the rift with his son, and some other, and actually his daughter was really influential too. I didn't really get that much of a chance to get into anything with her, but still kind of brought her into the story. But I was really interested with that, and then just doing all the other research and figuring out just how to make it work. But that was honestly, like, that was what kind of led, like, all those different things kind of led to Pistolfist. And I will say,
Awesome.
and yeah, and I will say this just because I don't get a chance to talk too much about the spiritual side or whatever too. There was so much of Pistolfist symbolically in other ways that just kind of came to me that
Mhm.
that I was like, oh, it would be really cool if this or if that. But I'm like, but I can't fudge that. I need to, I need to check and see if that's true. And it's like, oh my
Right.
gosh, it really is. And then like just so many things like that. And I just really felt like when we were making it, that because it was the thing that I really tried to focus on, it was freedom. Like, I didn't want it to be preachy, super pro America or super anti America. Like, I wanted it to really be
Right.
about freedom. And that's why, for those who don't know, why main reason why I came up with the main character being a runaway slave, but also because that connected to the Boston Massacre and the first one dying being a runaway slave, which I thought was fascinating. That
Right.
it was like, I don't know, 4 years after he escaped, and he's already and he happened to be taking the side of the colonists, of which he was enslaved by. But then he, just makes this twist and it makes this change like in his mind, where it's like when a lot of other people were, whether they were slaves or something, or kind of, downtrodden or some other way, that they would just choose to side with the British rather than the colonists. But this guy, who was an escaped slave, still wanted at the time, when he was part of the Boston massacre, that he was the first one to like really stand up to the British, and then be killed for it. And I will say that John Adams' argument on behalf of the British, and I know why he was doing it, because he was trying to stop a war from breaking out. But his defense for the guy that shot Crispus Attucks is baloney, because he argued that it was an accident. Now, anybody that knows anything about guns back then, if you're going to shoot somebody twice, there is no way it's by accident.
Right.
Maybe the first shot, but he was shot twice by the same guy with the same gun. And you only had one shot in those. And then you had to reload, put it in there, and then shoot again. And
honestly, officer, I accidentally poured powder into the muzzle, loaded my shot, aimed, and fired again.
Right. That's why I'm like, okay. It's like, no, sorry. I like you, John Adams, but that's bogus. I was like, I think you also had a judge that was not wanting, not wanting to inflame, relations with Britain anymore. And, could have been some prejudice too. Could have been, a view since it was a black guy or a runaway slave, that was the one that got shot. Because that was the main thing. Although they were, he was convicted, the guy who shot him, but it was like, I don't know, it was like house arrest or something. It was pretty lame for killing someone. It's
clearly
for murdering somebody. You get house arrest, and it was like for a month. I don't remember what it was. It was pretty lame for murder, though. I mean, it's especially, and that's the thing, I can justify one shot, but two shots, nah, I was like, there's no way. Not back then. Like that's baloney.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to that is actually a great segue for our second part of our show. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to talk specifically about Pistolfist. And for all you listeners out there, for your chance to get a copy of it, we will be right back.
Welcome, adventurers! Are you looking for an actual play podcast without profanity? Or maybe one that even Grandma can love? Well, you're in luck! Introducing Playing Games with Strangers! A bunch of voice actors get together to play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and weave a tale of comedy, tragedy, and dad jokes. And, on the plus side, the whole family can listen. Subscribe to the show at playinggameswithstrangers.com. New episodes release every Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Welcome back to Bees, Views, and Reviews. I have got JS Earls, comic book writer, and we are talking about how he got into comics, and specifically his next big project coming out called Pistolfist Revolutionary Warrior. Now, before the break, we were talking a little bit about what led you into coming up with the idea for Pistolfist and the thoughts behind it. Can you give us a quick spoiler-free summary of the plot of Pistolfist? Like if someone were to say, well, what's Pistolfist about? What would you say?
It really, it kind of, it depends on how good of a chance I think that they're going to, because there's certain things that we wanted to, that I wanted to like I didn't want to reveal that the main character was a runaway slave, but spoiler alert, the main character is a runaway slave. That's one of the reasons why he wears a mask. There's actually multiple reasons. Basically, this character wants revenge for his brother being murdered in the Boston Massacre. And then things happen to him that are not so great, and weird twists of fate and different things. And something that he thinks is kind of a curse put upon him is actually turns out to be a blessing. And it's kind of one of those, the devil meant it for evil, God meant it for good. And he is going to, I don't know. I'm trying to think of how God's gonna he's gonna get it turned around, turned for good. It leads him to crossing paths with Benjamin Franklin, who's also a key character in this. And there is kind of a connection with family and stuff like that. And then there's they have to come together, and he realizes that this thing that he thinks is a weapon was actually given to him to actually help save someone's life. And there's some things like that, and he kind of, I don't really get as explicit as I wanted to with it, because you're limited with your time and different things, and I wanted to get a little bit more into the fact of how his mind started to change, like his brothers did, and and where he was starting to see and understand the issues, and really how, in many ways, the British were treating the colonists like slaves. And
Oh wow.
I think, and honestly, I really, my personal opinion, I think that's one of the things. I think that's one of the things that Crispus Attucks saw, was how, especially because in Boston was like big time. I mean, it was like an occupied city back then.
Yeah.
And just, I think he saw that, and he probably, whatever, had familiar feelings or whatever, to what he felt when he was, and he was just like, and he just, on whatever level he connected with them. It's not like he said, oh well, that's, okay that they enslaved me or whatever. But I mean, there's some things like that he thought and then changed. Some people have said that they like, when I've asked them what they thought or what, how they got, like, they have made those kind of leaps that, and especially, I don't know if you got to read the whole thing, or if you just basically skimmed through it. But definitely he's kind of, towards the end, he's kind of held prisoner with a bunch of colonists and other people too. So definitely you kind of get the fact that, oh, well, they're all being, kind of mistreated and different things. But I will also say too, for those, I am a sucker for symbolism, and Pistolfist has tons of symbolism throughout it. While it is mixed with real history and even real science, because it was around that time back then, when one of Ben Franklin's pupils, who was an upcoming doctor, actually discovered where the heart produces electricity, which still boggles my mind that they figured that out. They figured out back then, and technically we're fudging on the timeline a little bit, because it was a couple years after the revolution ended, not right before it began, that he discovered that. But it's still, but we still say that in it, this is the guy who found it, and that's actually the guy who ends up surgically removing his forearm from him. And the one reason, and I'll just say this, because there's been some reviews, people that were just like, and I get it, because they're like, why would they give him this weapon? I was like, well, if you're paying attention, when he initially has it, like when he fires it, it gives him a heart attack, and he like collapses. So it's not like, because it's powered off the electricity, like in his body and stuff, and in his heart. So it's not like he can repeatedly use it.
Right.
It was more them experimenting on him to see like if this could work, and different things. And but the heart aspect is a lot of it. There's a lot of symbolism with that, with just his just there, and there's a lot of later, and people see it, and there's just a lot, which I wanted, because I love things like that with layers that people can, especially if they go back and read through it, or they take their time going through it again. Like I love stuff like that, if they're really taking their time and are really paying attention to things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, because some people just get hung up on the Benjamin Franklin thing, and that was, I included it for multiple reasons, but obviously because the whole science side of it, and like where this device comes from, and I'm like, well, who else is going to make it back then? I mean, it's a kind of a quick explanation, so you don't have to waste a lot of time on that kind of things, and slow down the story. But then that's the thing, the more I got to know Benjamin Franklin, who was by no way, no means a this upstanding, perfect moral person,
Right.
but he definitely tried, and I don't know, man. And he was the stuff when I know he definitely cheated on his wife, but they try to make it like that he was just this massive player, and when he had all these diseases and stuff at that time, and I'm just like, I don't I don't see it. Like, I don't
Right.
I mean, he had gout and like all these different things, and I'm just like, I don't know. I was like,
Yeah.
but anyways, there's just stuff like that I don't know, that I really connected with, and I thought were really fascinating stories to bring in and play off of. And
yeah, awesome. To what extent does your faith influence your writing, specifically in Pistol Fist, but also just in general with the comics that you write? Like, is it a heavy influence? Is it a light influence? Does it influence at all? Like,
well, it would I mean, it would really depend. I mean, I definitely try to pray before I write and things like that. And I guess I just believe, like, too, that like I'm, it will get me in a better headspace or whatever too. If I'm one of my biggest beefs with other religions compared to Christianity is the lack of humility. And not to say that there are not arrogant people in Christianity, but the basic idea of Christianity and humbling yourself before God, and ultimately that things are His decision, and it's His will kind of trumps our will, where we have a certain amount of freedom, but we can't do whatever we want, and we can't really do something that is 100% against His will. He's not going to let us hurt somebody that He doesn't want hurt. He's not going to just there's so many things that we don't really think about, because we do like to think of ourselves as like little gods or whatever. But there is something, I don't know, just beautiful and powerful about acknowledging that. And I think so even more so with your when you're doing something creative. I would say when you're doing anything at all, I mean, in my opinion, I think we're all creators. I think whatever we do, we're creating. Like, we were created to create. I mean, whether you're fixing things, restoring things, whether you're, whatever it is. I mean, when you start to look at everything in life, like the good things are the things we need to do, whether it's, repairs, medical treatment, like whether it's, it's trash people who clean up stuff, I mean, whatever it is like we're yes, we're caretaking and stuff, but we're creating, we're making something better, and we're trying to fix and restore things. And I just think that's, because we're made in the image of the Creator. I will say one of the biggest things for me, and I will share this because I've shared it with a lot of people. One of the biggest things for me that really, as far as my faith goes, that really changed and really opened doors for me, was when I totally got the idea of, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, I've arrived. I'm saying, like, when, like, we all have tests in our lives, and we all keep, and one thing I really encourage people to do too is look at the tests that you keep going through over and over, and ask yourself, what is the lesson God wants you to learn? Because when you learn it, then you'll graduate. Yes, new level, new devil, or whatever. But you will. I
like that, new level, new devil. I won't steal that.
Yeah. Well, I've heard it a few times too. But it's but that's the point of why we keep going through the things, and the same things over and over, or being tempted with the same thing, or being whatever it is. And it's like the reason why that's happening is because God's trying to get you to learn something, and if we can learn it, then we can move on, and to do things and stuff. And one of the biggest things that God really taught me, and really did not I really did not have doors open for me being a full-time professional writer until I really got it, but just really doing everything as unto the Lord. And I mean everything, and being a servant, and trying to do everything with the servant's heart and the servant's attitude, and doing what is best for other people, and just really trying not to look at yourself at all, and just really just really following Christ's example, and serving others, and being concerned about them, but for me, like, doing everything as unto the Lord is doing everything I can, to the absolute best of my ability. It's no matter what it was, no matter what I was doing at the office or whatever, whether it was something I did a million times, or something that I was just had to learn because of whatever situation or whatever. And it's like, and that's, I mean, honestly, like, pushing yourself to the best excellence you can, especially for the right reasons, will always serve you well. Because, and especially once it's like muscle memory. Like, once you get there, like, it's a lot easier to stay there and stay at like that kind of that high level, and of doing those things, because you're training yourself to do it. It's like, it's like anything with you're training yourself within those days and everything. And once you're doing those for month after month after month, where it's not just every hour and it's like every day, but you're really like, this is like, okay, this is the way I'm running my life, is I'm trying to be, is like, I mean, but really for me, that's the thing. And it really goes back to the love God and love your neighbor as yourself, where it's like my first focus is do everything as unto the Lord. Like, no matter what it is, whether it's taking out the trash, don't half-butt take out the trash, make sure that crap isn't falling out of the bag. Make sure that, it's like do everything like as if I was doing it for God, and then be a servant to those around me. And when you do those things, I mean, it's just going to open so many more opportunities. And honestly, like, one of the biggest, that's the thing, one of the things for me, and being that servant, and or at least trying to be that servant, opened a ton of opportunities that would be like, okay, well, you're not getting paid for this, but because you're really busting your butt on it, and you're turning things in way before deadlines, and all kinds of stuff, is like, then that leads to these other things. Because I had several different things like that, where I did things were for a small publisher, or other things that, oh my gosh, then they get these big contracts or big other things, and then guess who they want to work with them? The one who really came through for them, And it's like, and these little free things, or these things they paid me $200 or $300 for, that I should have been paid like a few $1,000s for, then I am getting $6,000 deals and other things to do other stuff. And then just even that, it's like when you put your focus on those things, then that was, and this is the crazy thing, and that's what I just kept, and it's funny, because I kept telling my mom, and my mom's like a prayer warrior, and I kept telling her that I was like, it is so weird. She's like, I'm telling you that God has his hand on this Pistolfist thing. I don't know why, because really, in a lot of ways, I was trying to be honest and true with it, and not try to preach with it. Right. I was just using it for that. I was just like, okay, they talked about God back then. They didn't shove it in people's faces, but like, they were free to talk about it. So there's a couple little places where we'll say stuff, but I don't like linger on or anything like that. But the crazy thing is because of the relationships with this, and because of the initial publishers that I had, ended up opening doors for me to do comics and graphic novels for Zondervan and Thomas Nelson.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's like, and I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know the future. As a matter of fact, I told one of my best friends now, who had been just getting going in comics, and he was sick to death of the stuff that he was drawing, that he was being hired to write, or hired to draw, where it was like super sexy or extremely violent, just really graphic stuff, and he was just like really tired of it, and he came to me and said, that he was a Christian and everything too, and he said, man, I just want to do Christian comics for a living. And I told him, I was like, you can't do Christian comics for a living. It's like, there's no market for it. And then, the next year, like probably even 6 months later, was when God opened up all those doors. And suddenly Thomas Nelson, Zondervan, a bunch of other things started getting into the comic book market. And I ended up doing Christian comics for a living for about 3 years. And I felt like it was God kind of, it's like, oh, you can't, huh? It's like, it's like, it's like, oh, you know everything now. You know the future. You know what the opportunities are going to be. I mean, because honestly, that's the thing. Like even with stuff like that, like those things happen. So they do not happen that much where a bunch of major publishers, especially Christian publishers that tend to be very careful, all decide to get into comics at the same time. And it's like, and it's not like, oh, well, they saw somebody's success and then did somebody else. They were investing, tens of thousands of dollars into like whole lines. And that was like the Zondervan stuff I did, which also was actually hooked up with Tokyo Pop at the time. So they had released some things with some of the Christian stuff via Tokyo Pop and some regular bookstores and stuff. And then, but around that same time, and my favorite author at the time was Ted Decker. And he and I had actually talked via email for years, because I had contacted with him after the book Black came out and told him how much I enjoyed it and loved the different symbolism and all this different stuff. And then he asked, like more about me and what I was doing with the comic stuff. And so then we were kept going back and forth on all this stuff. And he was always telling me like he was kind of trying to create his own comic book universe within his books, and he was a big comic fan growing up and everything. So, but then we actually got to work together, and I actually adapted 5 of his novels into graphic novels. And
whoa, you're the one that wrote those?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I feel like I should know that. I'm sitting here interviewing you. Wow, that's amazing.
Okay. I did. I did not do Red. Red was a weird thing that happened. Because that was like a deadline nightmare. There was just a bunch of big time problems on it. And then I was actually supposed to write, got hired to write a Showdown graphic novel based on his book Showdown. And so I was actually working on that, and they were so impressed with what I was writing and what the artist was drawing for it, that they actually said, we need you guys to come in on white. And you have like a month to finish it.
Oh, wow.
and we're like, I'm like, okay. And I like, it's so crazy. Like, we had, and this has happened so many times with me, it's kind of crazy. And I'm sure there's some sort of lesson in there, guys trying to teach me, but, I don't go on vacation very much, but when I do, I tend to get big gigs, and because that's
working vacation.
That's when I got there. I mean, that's what happened when we were going to the mountains, North Carolina. We used to love to go up there and stay for like a week or whatever, where there's not really great reception. And one of those times was when I got hired by National Geographic Channel to write some stuff. And I'm like, okay, this will be really interesting because they do not have good Wi-Fi and stuff around the area where we are. It's like, but I'm gonna make it work somehow. If I have to drive to a different town nearby and go to their Starbucks or whatever, like I'm gonna figure out a way to make this work, because they were because they were, it was just one of those things. Like, man, even if I hate it, it's like just having that on my resume will be phenomenal. So it's like, and it was just really cool. I mean, there was some cool stuff I got to do with that too, but yeah, and honestly, like I love Ted Decker to death. I mean, he is a great, he really is a great Christian, and very serious about that, and very, very serious about God. And there were times, and I've told a few people this, but there were times um, when there was some really cool stuff happening in our area, that like God was like moving in some like really big ways. And I went and I met him at his like agent like slash manager's house in Tennessee. I was actually there for this like they started doing these conventions. Like they actually the first one was put on by his fans, and then he got more involved and helped fund more of them, and be able to put like this full production on. And then Thomas Nelson got involved, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And
Wow.
and so they were like these really cool like once a year events. So anyways, but I went to his manager's house, who I'd become really good friends with. And he and when Ted got there that night, and there's these other other authors and other people there that were like decently well known. And
Yeah.
but Ted, like, he was so excited by the stuff that I was telling him that God was doing in kind of the Tampa Bay area at that time, that he walked straight through like all these other authors and all these different like big people that were, and all these different people that work for him and stuff too. And he like, when he saw me, and he walked straight to me, and he pulled up a chair, and he said, "Tell me about what God's doing."
Wow.
And I'm just like, I was like, man, and I say this because one of the things that I really felt like that it kept coming through me, coming to me so strong, was when I was doing stuff for him, was that God was kind of teaching me how to be a servant, like to Ted,
Yeah.
and to like, because it's not my name, it's his name plastered all over it.
Right.
And he was I just felt like it's like, this is, and like kind of the phrase that would just kind of keep repeating in my mind is, this is what it means to write in the name of another. And kind of like to be a servant, and not just to Ted, but in a way, be a servant to God. And
Right.
and just to do those things. And I've had some good opportunities. I actually have an awesome opportunity right now where I'm helping phenomenal buddy Jason Brubaker with the audio drama that we're going to do based on one of his things that is just becoming bigger than we ever thought it would be. And
Wow.
it is, and honestly, it's like one of those things where it's almost this, in a similar way to the way that Ted is. It's like I've just seen, it's mainly for Jason Brubaker's story, Sithra, which is on Webtoons. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story. It's like like an American Miyazaki thing. And
Okay.
it's very, very moving and very artistic, but it's very powerful, very symbolic. Jason is a really cool Christian guy. And he's also is one of the co-creators of Kung Fu Panda.
Oh boy.
And he
That's awesome.
yeah, and he left Hollywood because he felt God was telling him to. And this
Wow.
was when he was making tons of money, and people were willing to pay him a lot. And so like
Gosh.
I definitely respect people like that can make those big steps, especially when he had a wife and two kids, two little kids, and just to walk away from it. But he knew that he wasn't totally happy, like just doing, because most of this stuff was doing stuff for other people. And he is very much a creator. He like, yeah, he's one of those people. It's like I mean, it's like having Ben Franklin or some other like huge creative person like working for somebody else, and it's like, no, they should it's like you gotta set those people free. And it's like, and me as a creator, like I totally relate to that, of and I love the opportunity that I get to help him, and that that man, it's just like when you see something that is really special and you want to be involved with it, and then it makes it even more special when God ends up working it out so that you're able to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It's just it's super cool for me, and I've really I will tell you, it's really hard, and I've had some discussions in the last year with some creative Christian friends and writers and other people. It takes a lot of, and not like it doesn't for other people, but when you're a creator and when you're creating things and you are just bombarded with ideas all the time, it's very hard for you to be satisfied and
Yeah.
grateful for like what you have. And I know like everybody struggles with that. And it's, we always want something else or like whatever. But it's like, man, it's so hard because when you have those things, then you're automatically, not content, because you're like, oh, I
Right.
got to make this. I got to find, I got to do this thing. And especially if you feel like, whatever, it's from God or whatever. But then, even those things, this creation that's supposed to be pointing towards him can become an idol. I actually had
Yeah.
3 different times in my life where I was such a big fan of Christian music that I gave away every time I felt like I was like worshiping that more than God. I gave away all my albums.
Yeah.
So I did that probably 3 different times where, and so
Yeah.
it just, I don't know. It's cool to see God work in those ways and open those opportunities. And it's great when and that's the thing. I mean, because when I get those opportunities to do those things, I helped with the adoption of, it's called the Manga Bible, but it's the Z Manga Bible. It's the Zondervan one, which
Yeah.
was more comedy-ish. And
Yeah.
I actually did 7 of those, I think.
Oh,
7,
wow.
6
Cool.
6 or 7 of those volumes. And obviously when you deal with that, you're able to deal with more scripture and more,
Yeah.
whatever. And you're able to be more free, and it's for a different audience. And I mean, honestly, I think this is one of my big things. And I know we're running out of time, but somebody can edit this.
Yeah.
One of my,
Hi, JS. I'm not going to edit a single bit of this. This is all you, buddy. I want the world to see how wonderfully crazy you truly are. Back to the show.
Hi, Dallas. One of my big beefs with the and I don't say this in a bad way, because I feel like we aren't grateful enough for the opportunities that God has. I know we like to bash Christian films and a lot of other stuff, but at the same time too, we should be grateful that some of those things even exist, or those opportunities were even there, and that some people do enjoy them. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
The reason we have The Chosen is because we had Facing the Giants first.
right.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. I was talking with my wife about that just the other day, about how, we look at Facing the Giants and okay, it's a little hokey at times, but you know what? That laid the groundwork. That said, hey, Christians can make films that are overtly Christian and put them in front of mainstream audiences, and they do well. And it's on the backs of movies like Facing the Giants that we have projects like The Chosen, which is such a great done TV show.
Right.
But the reason Dallas Jenkins is having that kind of success is because Facing the Giants paved the way.
Right. Yeah. No. And well, the other thing, the other aspect that and it's funny, because I talked to some of the different publishers and other people too about this, was that one of my big beefs with the Christian like novels and other things is so many of them are like salvation oriented, where the audience is Christian, and where they were only primarily sold in Christian stores. And it's like, if that's where it's going to be, why are you not doing more like discipleship oriented things, or things to messages and themes to grow people's faith, rather than giving, give them, like the Bible says, give them meat, don't give them, let's move on from the baby food to deeper stuff, because this is who you're talking to, and there's a lot of things like that. Like I just really, I think would be helpful. And I don't know, that's one of the things when people have asked me and stuff what I would recommend or whatever, and I'm like, well, that's if you're gonna be because there is a market for it for sure, but yeah, it's like, but it can't just always. As much as I love the gospel, it's like as Christians we have to deepen our faith and deepen our and just so many other aspects and grow that, not forget it or move away from it, because I'm very much in the vein of when I look at when you read the Bible and so much of that, they were like so much of the New Testament was like, man, they were doing communion every day, and stuff. And there's a lot of things like that it's like, no, we always have to remember, these things, and we can't, move away from them and not, but, use them as our foundation and the thing that we point back to. But, that's, it just, for me, it always comes back to that of just, just trying to do whatever you do with excellence. And that's what I tried to do with Pistolfist. And I really made an effort to really, not just to not make it super preachy, but to make it not political, really.
Right.
And we had people from all over the world involved, and we had hardcore liberals and hardcore conservatives involved, and just all over the board. And it's like, and same with the fans. We have like all kinds of different fans of it over the years. It's been 15 years. This Kickstarter is the 15th anniversary. It's actually starts on my birthday, November 17th, which is not when we originally launched, but it actually was around the first issue of Pistolfist actually did come out around the middle of November. So we're actually, this is actually, it is a legit, it's legit for that. And that was one of the reasons for anybody that listened to or read your stuff about Nemo. That's one of the reasons why instead of redoing our Nemo thing, which we need to do, why I did jump to this. And so, I mean, that's
timing of it.
Yeah, it's more of the timing of it. And honestly, I know we didn't touch on it too much, but I didn't have full rights to Pistolfist back because of one of the last publishers I used, and they still had 50%. And then I had a friend of mine that helped me. Like I put in half the funds and he put in half the funds to be able to buy back the other 50%. So, and that publisher, the last time they printed it was like 10 years ago. So it's actually hasn't been in print for 10 years. It's never been in hardcover. We're going to have soft cover and hardcover with a lot of different choices in the Kickstarter. And it really in the spirit, even though there's a couple brand new covers that we have for choices for people, a lot of the cover choices people have too are from different periods in the last 15 years that Pistolfist has been around, and I'm kind of like repurposing them for this as kind of
cool.
I don't know, kind of like a trip down memory lane or whatever. Especially for the people who remember them. And there's a lot of people who haven't haven't seen them and stuff before, and honestly, it's kind of like a thank you because some of the people are involved, like they not many people saw them, or I've done a lot of other things with them, or they've done a lot of other stuff for me, and it's kind of a way for me to kind of point stuff out about what they've done. And we do have, I will say this too, for anybody that likes original paintings or whatever, or stuff like that, we actually do have some paintings that were done by people. We actually have a Native American fan of Pistolfist that I stumbled across on DeviantArt many years ago. Wow. Who had painted a Pistolfist picture when I was looking for something else. And then I ended up seeing, I'm like, what? We didn't have that picture done. And then I found out he was really a fan. And so then he showed me some other ones that he painted. And we actually have at least one right now we're going to have of his available on the original actually painting that he did. And then another one, which I know you saw, and anybody else that might see, we have a prose anthology that we're doing. He's the one that painted the cover of that.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah. And that's actually like, I think that one is actually like an oil painted canvas. The other one is like a watercolor and acrylic thing. So that one's a little bit cheaper. That one I think is like $150 or something. But yeah, the acrylic one will probably be like, I don't know, 300 or 400 or something, if anybody even
Awesome.
wants it. But it's a real piece of art though. So
Yeah, which is hard to come by these days.
yeah.
All right. Well, we were at the time of this recording, the Kickstarter has not yet started, but we will definitely put a link to the Kickstarter when it goes live in the description to this, so you can be sure and go and support it. By all means, help get Pistolfist out there and help it get backed up. JS, if people want to look into some of your other stuff or just follow you or hear you do your awesome Orbog the Paladin impression,
Yeah.
where can they follow you?
I probably the best place is on Facebook. And I think it's like it's either JS Earls.writer or it's like Earls.js.writer. And on Facebook, it's probably the best place, and you'll get a lot of other links on there. I am on Instagram too. Not as often. I am on Twitter too, not as often. I have a lot more publishing contacts and things on Facebook, actually. So that's one reason why I tend to be there more. And that's also where, as I kind of touched on, we do have our own, Ben Avery and I created our own podcast, audio drama with music and sound effects, even a composer now.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. So with our own kind of like Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's our own version, and there is some Christian stuff in there. We definitely don't shy away from it, but it's not really upfront unless it's appropriate, and feels kind of natural. But we do have several Christian characters and different things, and there are elements of things in there. But anyways, but we have a cast of about 40 to 50 people. And so, really busy there, really busy with communicating with those 40 to 50 people that do stuff with us. And, we have the Sithra thing coming out, which will be awesome. I'm trying to think. Yes. As you mentioned, playing games with strangers. I am very happy that so many people are entertained by my grumpy Orbog.
I gotta say, Orbog is one of my favorite characters. One of the episodes I was listening to recently, I forget which number it was, but Pooh had the needle stuck in his paw, or something. They were talking about Pooh felt the need to leave because he was afraid he was going to endanger his friends.
Yeah,
and Stumblefoot is saying, "But Pooh, we're your friends. I mean, we're your everyone here is Pooh's friend, right?" And Orbog says, "Give me a moment." I died laughing. I could not stop laughing.
Yeah,
it was hilarious.
He can be brutally honest, and he definitely he'll swing for some low fruit sometimes. That's there, but yeah, I mean, honestly, the funny thing is, and I'll recommend this for people too that like that love fantasy stuff but don't like they want like more all ages stuff without a bunch of bad stuff in it, which unfortunately there's not a lot of game things like that on, which is one of the reasons why we kept doing playing games with strangers. It was actually originally never supposed to go beyond 4 episodes.
Wow.
It was just supposed to be something that we did for like a month or something, just to kind of help entertain our fellow castmates and stuff in the Supersonic universe, and just kind of have fun and be kind of silly. While there is some very serious stuff in it, but we just had such a good time together, and it was just so funny. We're just cracking up, and so many people started liking it that it was just like, it's like, yeah, we should just keep doing this until we don't feel like we're supposed to do it anymore, because it's like, man, we work well it's tough to find, it's like when you find those good improv people that you do stuff with, it's like, man. And honestly, and that's the thing, like I didn't even want to be a part of it, because I knew what a bad actor I am, and compared to these other people who've done some very serious acting, but again, it's one of those things where it's like, but I need to grow in that. I don't because, and I will say this too, there is a major character who's become who's going to become more major in our supersonic universe that I am the voice of. And not really by my choice, but by Ben Avery's. And so like I've gotten more into that. He's kind of more like a Wolverine kind of character, like the way like he's a real tough guy,
Yeah.
and really rough, and that's but he's going to start to play a big larger role with where we're heading. So I kind of was like, yeah, it's like when they were trying to talk me into doing it, and Ben was too busy. We wanted to have one of us involved, since Ben and I are kind of the co-creators, and I was like, and Ben was just way too busy, because when the pandemic was going big time, and Ben is a full-time youth pastor.
Oh gosh.
And he's also one of the main pastors that deals with the community and like helps and really and does a lot of the house to house visiting and all those things. That I was just like, it was unrealistic and unfair to put more on his plate with what was already happening with all the lockdowns and everything. And so that's why I was just like, well, it's like I'll do it. I need to get better at acting and stuff anyways. And so just I mean, I've always been an idiot and silly and different things behind the scenes, and I try to keep things fun, because a lot of entertainment stuff behind the scenes is not very fun at all. And so I like to make the people I'm working with laugh and them to have a good time and everything too. So, and I'm literally like, I'm really shocked by how many people have really genuinely like Orbog and actually think I do a good job at doing him. And I think we actually even have playlists on Spotify for each character. And I think Orbog by far has the most, even though his are like, if you go check it out, whoever goes check it out, you're going to see that they're all like stupid, silly songs. Because he doesn't take a lot real seriously.
Right.
But anyways, I'll be interested to see when you get further and you hear some other things that happen. But
it was funny. I was talking to Dallas about that, and I started listening to it just to have background noise while I worked. Because I grew up with two younger sisters, so I'm not used to quiet. I'm used to there being something in the background. So I would have it running in the background, and I actually had to stop listening to it during work because I got to where I was paying attention.
Right.
And
you're stopping or working slow.
Right. So what would end up happening was I would be like, okay, I can't listen to that now. And I'd be working, and then I'd hear somebody say something, and I'd be like, wait, I have no clue what even is happening right now. So I've gotten to where I have to listen outside of work so I can actually pay attention to the plot and know what's going on. So playing games with strangers is not background noise anymore. Y'all have been promoted to, no, I'm actively going to listen now.
Yeah. No, I like, and it's funny. It's one of those things. And honestly, it seems like a lot of things now are so niche, like the people who love something, like they really love it. And that's kind of like the way that we actually have a lot more listeners on the Supersonic Podcomics, like 10 times or more. I mean, some of it is because I think we do put up right up front. We're like, well, this is all ages. Like we're not, even though it will get dark and stuff. Yeah, we don't have swearing. We don't have sexual stuff. And like literally like 95% of the other like fantasy, acting, improv podcasts out there like have all that stuff. And we're like, man, we need this. And actually too, that was the thing I was going to say for other people that do want to look up stuff. The Sneak Attack podcast and the Titans of Altera are both really cool, very family friendly, but really well done podcasts.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that inspired me to actually want to be playing games with strangers with Orbog.
Yeah, well, that's what started this podcast here, was trying to find specifically comic books, but just content in general. That, because I said on the very first episode I did with Dallas was, my idea is for me to be sitting in my chair reading a comic book, and my two boys come up and said, "Daddy, can I read your comic book with you?" And me be able to say, "Yes, absolutely." Let's have a seat, and not have to be like, well, let's skip that page because it's got something you don't need to see, or you don't need to ask what that word means. To be able to just openly read a comic with my children, but at the same time be enjoyed by it. I'm not reading Tiny Toon Adventures, although
Right.
Tiny Toon Adventures was entertaining, so that's a bad example.
Right.
But you know what I mean? Nothing
Yeah.
that's intended
yeah.
for little bitty kids.
Right.
So the fact that y'all are creating that kind of content is really the heartthrob of what Bees Use and Reviews is to call attention to that kind of stuff, because I like entertaining stuff, but I also want my kids to be able to participate too.
Well, you should. Yeah, I will say you should listen probably to more. I don't know how much you've heard or if you've heard any of the Supersonic Podcomic stuff, but that is it's not like we didn't want it to be family friendly. We wanted it to be family friendly, but we weren't intending it to have stuff that we had to make sure that like very much younger listeners would be able to follow.
Right.
We wanted to go a little bit darker than what we've been able to, because one of the things we discovered and then we found out is like whole families were listening together, and it's
Right.
like that's awesome. And then, but at the same time too, it's like we got to change a little bit of some of the stuff we wanted to do, where it's not quite so violent or whatever. But I mean, we go when it's appropriate, we go there. It's just kind of like the Marvel stuff. I mean, they get really really violent sometimes in their movies, but it's done. And this is not an endorsement of them at all, but it's still done with a certain amount of tact or whatever. Like if there's something really gross that happens, it's probably going to happen off camera, things like that.
There is a line that they tend not to cross.
Yeah, that they kind of, because, and honestly, I mean, obviously, like I think that their motivation is money, and they know that the more you cross those lines, the less money you're going to make, because you're limiting your audience and the people that can see it and everything else. And they may not have the best motivations, but that's why, there's some of those things happen. And for us, it's been, okay, well, we have some things we wanted to do. It's like, we're going to have to pull it back a little bit, because it's like, okay, well, this is our audience. We can't make stuff for what we want our audience to be. We have to follow like what our audience is. So my silly one, Sumo Girl, I very much leaned into some borderline potty humor and stuff, and that, because she's a little girl and stuff in it, and we definitely go a lot more that way. But and there are definitely characters and things and certain things which is it does tend to be a little bit more immature or whatever, but it's not. I don't think it's not really overdone, but it's I don't know. For me, I love it because I feel like we have a good variety, and and we keep making a lot of connections with different people and professionals that are either Christians or just people that would like family friendly stuff that want to be involved. And so we're getting more of those people involved and stuff in some of our things, and but I think you'll like it because it's a superhero universe, and it's all interconnected.
Awesome. I have it added to my subscription list, but all of my free time has been going to playing games with strangers, so I haven't started it yet. But but I have it added.
I totally get that. I would definitely, especially but it starts small and big. We have a little preview that was actually before we had any voice actors with us, and that was one of the reasons why the creators were the one voicing the characters. It was kind of like a proof of concept, but it ends up leading into the big thing that happens, and it's kind of like, it's almost like, in some ways it's almost like we start with Endgame, where it's
I see.
It's like, bang, okay, these are the characters. We have 4 main series, and these are the main characters from all 4 series, and then it splits into 4 series from there, because it's all related to an event that happens, and then it kind of splits, and you follow, and then you kind of go off, and they kind of have their own thing, but now we're finishing, after a long time because of the pandemic, we're finishing the first season, and it's just, man, it's gotten so huge. It's just, like, if anybody that listens to my codename Superforce, like, oh my gosh, like the amount of production that we do on those episodes, the amount of production. I did most of the production on the second episode, which is our huge big one called Origin. It like I was not the only person who worked on the production of it and of the sound editing and everything, but I spent over 100 hours on it.
Wow.
And then we had other people working on it too. And so like when people hear it, it's like there's a lot of sound effects and a lot of timing and really cool stuff. And we do like we do songs. We actually have some different Christian artists and stuff that we have some songs by. Like they're not super preachy songs or whatever, but yeah, there's like a Christian rapper that we have some of his stuff in one of the series, and then we have
cool.
Sumo Girl actually has, it's almost like more like a punk song. But it's called Still Alive because she has severe autoimmune deficiency, and so that's why she actually has a bubble thing that her scientist father made for her. And,
nice.
And she uses it as kind of like a, I don't know, weapon, I guess, or whatever she needs to use it for. But
right,
yeah, but it's pretty crazy. And yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, you I don't know if did you listen to the Sumo Girl episode that was on? I did in the Playing Games feed.
Yes, I did. That's the one episode I listened to because it connected with Playing Games with Strangers. Yep. So I got to hear about Sumo Girl's things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
And we have our different and actually the I don't know if you remember, if you've seen it on our other stuff, but our Othe character that Celeste and a lot of people love, she's voiced by this one girl who's kind of hit it big in Hollywood now and has been on one of Tyler Perry's shows. And wow. And and she's not going to be able to return to us after this season. But she was great.
Awesome.
But yeah. And honestly, like that episode with Sumo Girl, and I don't know if you've heard John say it. He said it a couple different times, different places, but it changed the direction of Playing Games after that episode because of what happened and the fact that they were gone from their universe and then came back.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a lot of like major changes that happened because of that, and it ended up being really cool. But I think we're doing some pretty cool stuff.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to follow Geek Devotions on all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the whole thing. Also, be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast catcher and leave reviews. We like to hear feedback. I want to say a huge thank you to the great JS Earls for coming on the show and talking with us. We're super excited about Pistolfist coming out. Thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Until then, stay devoted.
Peace and love.